The future of a number of players is up in the air at Manchester City. So it's time for a little transfer rater with senior ESPN writer Mark Ogden as we talk about who's going to stay and who may go from the Etihad. The first name on the list is Fernandinho. Recently celebrated his 35th birthday, has been very dependable for Pep this season, but he did sign that one-year contract extension earlier this year. So does that mean, Mark, he could be sticking around a little longer?
I think that Fernandinho, I'd be very surprised if he left. I think that you're right, he's getting on in years a little bit, but he's been the most consistent player at the Etihad for maybe 4 or 5 years now, certainly in the defensive element anyway. And I think the fact that they gave him that 12-month extension shows the fact that not only do they need him, but they haven't successfully found a replacement yet. They signed Rodri last year from Atletico Madrid, and he hasn't quite, filled the gap. He's done okay, but, they do miss Fernandinho and he doesn't play midfield. So I think one more year for Fernandinho, definitely.
Do you think that Pep can find that long-term defensive partnership, though, the fact that he's had to play him out of position there?
It's difficult, isn't it? I think when he plays at the back, Fernandinho, he makes an impact. He's a good centre-half, considering his lack of height, but when he doesn't play in midfield, they miss him in midfield. So they really need to find somebody that isn't out there right now. Perhaps he's one of these irreplaceable players, a bit like Vincent Kompany, that City have players that go. And, how do they replace the likes of Kompany, David Silva, Sergio Aguero, and he goes? Some of these guys are irreplaceable.
Now, the next name on the list is a name that may not have entered had it not been for his off-the-field behaviour during the lockdown. It's Kyle Walker, though by all accounts, it does seem as though the club are going to stick by him.
Yeah, Walker signed quite a long-term contract not so long ago, maybe I think about a year ago. And I think, despite I think he's pushing 30, maybe over 30 now, I'd be very surprised if Walker goes because, yes, there have been some off-field issues during the lockdown. I think ultimately he's a player that City rate, is a player that Guardiola rates highly. If they were to let him go, because of what's happened during the lockdown, whether some clubs would maybe put off by the prospect to kind of rehabilitate him a little bit and get him back on the pitch, I don't know. So I think City will stick with Kyle Walker because ultimately, when he's on the pitch, he's a reliable right back.
It sticks around though, but we do know that Pep Guardiola likes to have a top player, at least 2 of them, in each position. Very strong rumours about Nelson Semedo arriving at Man City. Would that be some competition there for Kyle?
Absolutely, and it's probably what Walker needs. If he has got a little bit of complacency in there, he probably needs someone like Semedo to push him along. But I do think this summer is going to be so different to any other because the financial situation across all the big clubs is going to be it's unprecedented really in the sense that clubs are struggling for money. So I'd be surprised if a lot of people actually made moves this summer. So that might mean Semedo stays at Barcelona.
Let's see what you've got to say about the next player, Nico Otamendi. Been rumours that he would like to go and play at the club that he supports, River Plate, but he said he is committed to Manchester City in his immediate future. But are they as committed to the player?
I think with Otamendi, if City could find a buyer that would give them the money, maybe not even the money back, but just kind of cover the loss, I think they'd take it. But the problem that City have got is that they haven't really got a reliable centre-half beyond Aymeric Laporte. Laporte has done really well, but he was injured last season. John Stones had a bad year. Otamendi makes as many mistakes as anybody else. So I think there's a lot of centre-halves at City that could be let go, but they don't have the numbers, as we found out last year when Fernandinho had to dip in at the back. So they haven't replaced Vincent Kompany. He left a year ago. So if they can find a centre-half to come in, yes, but as it stands, they're struggling to replace people. So I think Otamendi might have to stay because they need to get the numbers up.
Next, we'll talk about Leroy Sane. Now, Pep Guardiola has said that he won't stop him if his wish is to move on. And it does look as though that wish would be to go to Bayern Munich. There's been so much talk about it. Even Robert Lewandowski's been out, I think, a couple of weeks ago saying that he'd love to have him there. But could the pandemic change things? And could City try and keep hold of him?
The pandemic really could change things because, Bayern Munich are big admirers of Leroy Sane. And I think as well, if you're a German player, and you get an offer from Bayern Munich, it's very hard to resist going back to the biggest club in Germany. City had it with Jerome Boateng a few years ago where he had a year or two at City and Bayern came calling. But, the game's changed. Karl-Heinz Rummenigge said last week that a lot of clubs are going to be struggling for money, even the likes of Bayern Munich. So it all depends on whether City are going to be realistic with a fee for Sane, whether they will hold out for a fee that Bayern won't pay. So I think there's a desire at Bayern's part. I think Sane wants to get away. Whether City wants to play hardball and keep him, the longer they keep him without a new contract, the less he's worth. So I think ultimately he'll go this summer.
Is it true that City are trying to avoid that, to let these players who are top targets let their contracts run down so that they can still get a good fee for them?
Yeah, City don't tend to lose players for nothing. They're very good at tying players up, a year or two before the contract expires. But Sane's got himself into a situation now where he could basically, tell City, I'm not going to sign any deal. I think it's next year when it's up. So City have got a problem, and he's a great talent, and he's like a young Gareth Bale, the way he kind of tears down the left. But if he wants to go back to Germany and Bayern Munich are calling, even Man City with all their wealth and power couldn't stop him, I don't think.
On the flip side, one player who said he really wants to stick around and continue playing for Pep Guardiola is Gabriel Jesus. And there's a lot of talk about his future and whether he will be Sergio Aguero's replacement going forward. So does he stick around for longer?
Yeah, I think City have to keep Gabriel Jesus because Aguero's contract ends in 12 months' time. And Aguero's made it pretty clear time and again that he wants to go back to Independiente when he finishes at City. Now, that might be a bargaining tactic. City might find a way to get him an extra 12 months. But if Aguero goes next year and they let Jesus go now, they're going to have to replace two strikers and maybe get a third. So I think Jesus has to stay because they can't afford to be without two strikers in 12 months' time. And as we know, Aguero's had a few injuries over the years. He tends to get muscle problems. So you need Jesus in the squad just to make sure that the numbers are there. But also, he probably does need to step up a bit more, Jesus, to prove that he's the talent that we all thought he was 3 or 4 years ago.
Next is a man who's ruffled Pep Guardiola's feathers maybe a few too many times, Benjamin Mendy. And his future definitely is interesting. Does he have a future at left back at City?
Mendy's one of those players that absolutely infuriates Pep Guardiola. He thinks he's a real talent. He's a guy that can get up and down the wing. He's got great energy, great power, great strength, but he's so unreliable off the pitch as well as on it as well. There are times when on the pitch his concentration goes. So I think Guardiola has lost a lot of patience with him. He still realises the player there, but if somebody's prepared to, I think City paid £50 million for him about 3 or 4 years ago. If somebody's prepared to pay that sort of money for him again, then City'd let him go. But it's a new world, isn't it, with coronavirus affecting the transfer market. So I think City would be extremely lucky to get anything like even half the price for Benjamin Mendy. So I think he stays.
It's certainly going to be interesting to see what happens going forward due to the pandemic. Competition always high at Man City, but so too at the States when it comes to silverware. So we'll see what happens going forward at the Etihad.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.